How do we structure an effective training program for calisthenics skills? Most of you would follow methods promoted by calisthenics gurus like Grease the Groove or the 2-set method. But blindly following methods without understanding the reasons behind them isn't a good way to train. So in this video, I'll break down the science behind calisthenics skill training and provide an evidence-based training structure that can be applied to any skill, along with a real-life example of how I structure my own training program. First off, the primary quality that needs to develop for calisthenic skills is maximal strength, which means producing the greatest amount of force possible in a specific movement. Just like how in powerlifting there's always a heavier PR you can bench, it's the same for calisthenics. Because even if you master a skill progression like the straddle planche, there will always be a harder progression that comes next, the full planche. Then you can aim for more difficult skills: planche press, planche push-up, Maltese hold, Maltese press, Van Gelder, Carmona. The ceiling of 1 rep maxes in the realm of static skills is infinite. So calisthenics is a strength sport. But what is strength? Strength is an outcome of adaptations. These adaptations can be categorized into peripheral adaptations and neural adaptations. Peripheral adaptations are the physical changes within muscle and connective tissue. These adaptations increase the muscle's physical capability to produce and transmit force to the bone. A couple examples are fiber hypertrophy, muscle hyperplasia, myofilament packing density, fiber type distribution, and tendon stiffness. On the contrary, neural adaptations are the changes in coordination of muscle activity by the central nervous system. Neural adaptations can be further categorized as intramuscular coordination and intermuscular coordination. Intramuscular coordination is the coordination of motor units within a single muscle to produce force. The 3 adaptations of intramuscular coordination are motor unit recruitment, rate coding, and synchronization. Next, intermuscular coordination is the coordination of a movement pattern involving multiple muscle groups. These muscle groups can be labeled as agonist, synergist, stabilizer, or antagonist. Some adaptations of intermuscular coordination are synergist or stabilizer activation, reduced antagonist co-activation, and overall movement pattern refinement. Combined, these adaptations result in an upgraded motor program. You're able to perform the movement more efficiently because you're coordinating the right muscles in the right pattern. You now understand that becoming stronger in calisthenics comes from developing these adaptations. And the way to develop these adaptations is by training. Every training session acts as a stimulus for 2 separate effects: a fitness gain and fatigue. The fitness gains are the neural and peripheral adaptations produced, while fatigue is the neural and peripheral fatigue that results in a temporary and reversible reduction in performance. Fitness gains resulting from one training are moderate in magnitude but long-lasting, while the fatigue effect is greater in magnitude but short-lasting. It's estimated that fitness gains last 3 times longer than the fatigue effect. So if fatigue lasts for 24 hours, fitness gains will remain for 72 hours. Preparedness is the sum of positive changes from fitness gains and negative changes from the fatigue effect. It's your potential to perform, a state existing at all times, even when you're not training or competing. The goal of an effective training program is to maximize accumulation of gains in preparedness. To do so, we must optimize training to acquire maximal fitness while keeping fatigue minimal. Now, I'll share the evidence-based training structure that can be applied to any calisthenic strength-based skill. Every training is split into 2 parts: skill work and accessory work. Skill work is defined as highly specific training that resembles your end goal skill as closely as possible. Skill work is a must and should make up 70 to 80% of your total training volume. The purpose of skill work is to improve coordination in the movement pattern. For example, engaging scapular depression in the front lever pull-up, protraction in the planche, and so on. When you show your brain these improvements in movement pattern, it adopts them as the new default, because your brain reinforces what you practice. That's why it's important to perform your skill sets with good form. You reinforce the correct movement pattern and improve coordination. As a result, you get stronger in the skill. For skill work, choose a primary exercise that most closely resembles your end goal skill in terms of joint positions, range of motion, required muscle actions, and force direction. This is your main exercise. Place this as the first exercise in your workout and choose a high intensity progression that you can perform with clean form. Do 3 to 6 sets far from failure at 40 to 60% of your max reps or hold time, 1 to 5 reps per set, and 4 to 5 minutes rest in between sets. If the primary exercise doesn't accumulate enough high quality volume on its own, we can add a secondary exercise that's an easier variation of the primary exercise. We can do this by either moving down a progression or by adding a 5 to 10 kg resistance band. This is your back-off exercise. It follows the same rules as your main exercise, but with less sets. So 1 to 4 sets, far from failure at 40 to 60% of your max hold time or reps, 1 to 5 reps per set, and 4 to 5 minutes of rest between sets. Training at a high intensity allows us to train for the intramuscular coordination required to perform our goal skill. Training far from failure prevents fatiguing early on during the session. We can perform more high quality sets, accumulate more clean reps at a high intensity. This allows us to acquire a greater stimulus for neural adaptations. The frequency of skill work for one skill should range anywhere from 2 to 4 times per week or even up to 5 times per week. Lower frequencies would demand higher average volumes and intensities, while higher frequencies would demand lower average volumes and intensities. It's important to choose a suitable training load and recovery duration between sessions so that all fatigue effects dissipate and fitness gains remain by your next training session. Often when you're fatigued, you end up using and reinforcing a worse movement pattern. That's why you actually need to be fresh to improve coordination. Moving on, accessory work is defined as supplementary training that develops the underlying qualities which improve performance in a specific skill, but aren't sufficiently trained by practicing the skill itself. Accessories are good to have and should make up 20 to 30% of total training volume. They can be divided into hypertrophic accessories and technical accessories. Hypertrophic accessories develop strength and hypertrophy in muscles involved in the target skill. These accessories should only be used for 2 broad scenarios. Scenario 1 is to obtain additional hypertrophic stimulus for either agonist, synergist, or specific stabilizer muscles when skill-specific volume has been maximized and target muscle still has available recovery capacity. For example, if the stratus anterior is your limiting factor in the planche hold, your front delts wouldn't have received enough hypertrophy stimulus because they were simply too far away from failure. In this case, we can choose an accessory that isolates the front delts to provide more stimulus for our front delts without adding more stratus limited specific volume. Scenario 2 is to prevent injuries in connective tissue. This works because when a joint is placed under tension, something has to resist that force to prevent that joint from being pulled past its safe range. This resisting force is shared between passive tension produced by connective tissue and titin in muscle, along with active tension produced by contractile muscle tissue. When we use hypertrophic accessories to build more muscle and improve motor unit recruitment, our muscles can generate more active and passive tension to resist the load. The connective tissue carries a smaller portion of the total load, resulting in less strain on the tissue that's slowest to adapt and most prone to injuries. For hypertrophic accessories, choose an objective and stable exercise. This usually means a gym exercise that allows us to measure and standardize our load, repetitions, and range of motion. Always perform the accessories after your skill work and on the same day. Do 2 to 5 weekly sets, split across multiple training sessions. Do your sets close to failure, 0 to 2 reps in reserve, 5 to 12 reps per set, and 4 to 5 minutes of rest in between sets. The 5 to 8 rep range is optimal, but if your technique breaks down, use the 8 to 12 rep range. Doing 2 to 5 weekly sets is already enough for significant hypertrophy, while keeping fatigue interference with skill work minimal. The more you spread out your accessory sets throughout the sessions, the less total fatigue you accumulate and the more total fitness you gain. Just to illustrate, 1 set of front raises done 4 times per week beats 2 sets of front raises done twice per week. Training close to failure allows us to recruit the high threshold motor units that normally can't be accessed during skills due to their high complexity and perception of effort. Lastly, while all rep ranges build muscle, we train with lower reps and heavier loads because lower reps produce less CNS fatigue, resulting in shorter recovery time. Heavier loads are more likely to trigger neural adaptations such as an increase in motor unit recruitment. Finally, it's much easier to gauge reps in reserve and train close to failure when training with heavier loads and lower reps. The second type of accessory is the technical accessory. A technical accessory teaches the correct technique that an athlete is unable to execute properly. Technical accessories are only required when a technical weakness is present. That's why a technical accessory should only be used on a case-to-case basis, in situations where you struggle to achieve a position in the first place. For technical accessories, choose a special exercise that can help you isolate, practice, or exaggerate the specific technique you are unable to execute. Pair the exercise with a relevant cue that will eventually transfer to your skill work. Choose a low intensity variation, do 2 to 4 sets far from failure at around 30 to 50% of your max reps or hold time. 1 to 5 reps per set and at least 4 minutes of rest in between sets. Because the exercise is low intensity, low volume, and far from failure, its fatigue cost is close to zero. So you should perform the technical accessory as often as the weakness needs addressing. The 3 skills I'm training for in order of priority are 1 arm front lever hold, straddle planche hold, and front lever pull-up. My training frequency is 4 times a week on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And I begin every training with my primary skill exercises. The first exercise is 1 arm front lever hold for 3 sets in the 4 to 8 second range, far from failure. It's an extremely technical exercise and I focus on optimizing technique by engaging side tilt, retraction, depression, angle of my torso, and so on. Second exercise is band assisted straddle planche hold for 4 sets in the 5 to 8 second range, far from failure as well. I'm currently in a phase where I'm learning a new technique for my straddle planche, focusing on external rotation of the humerus, protraction, depression, looking downwards, squeezing my glutes instead of the abs, and actively pushing the bar forwards through shoulder flexion. The third exercise is band assisted full front lever pull-ups for 4 sets in the 2 to 5 rep range, 2 reps in reserve. And I actually alternate between sets of front lever pull-ups and straddle planche holds. I first enter the front lever hold with retracted and depressed scapulas plus anterior pelvic tilt and locked out knees. I also try my best to pull my body in a straight path with as much explosive force as possible. I then have secondary skill exercises which are easier progressions of the planche and front lever pull-up. I do advanced tuck planche holds for 2 sets in the 5 to 8 second range, far from failure, to acquire more coordination stimulus for my new technique. I alternate that with super advanced tuck front lever pull-ups for 2 sets in the 5 to 7 rep range, far from failure too. My intention here is to practice generating as much explosive force as possible from the bottom range of motion. Next, I perform a technical accessory, the elevated planche lean hold, because I'm not able to execute my new planche technique properly in my skill work yet. I do 3 sets of these in every training after my skill work, and also an additional 1 to 3 sets every day using Grease the Groove. Finally, I move on to hypertrophic accessories consisting of 6 exercises. Incline dumbbell front raise for front delts, shoulder width seated cable row for lats, single arm reverse pec deck for rear delts, overhead tricep extension for triceps, dumbbell wrist extension for wrist extensors, and dumbbell wrist curl for wrist flexors. I do 1 set of each exercise with 1 rep in reserve. Perform 3 times a week on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, because it allows me to have a rest day afterwards. You now understand the science behind calisthenics skills training, and you have a structure you can apply to any skill you want. All that's left is to build your program and to start training to unlock your dream calisthenics skill.